Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining today. I'm hoping everybody can hear me. We're in a new office today, so we're having a bit of dilemmas with getting access to files and things like that. So I just need to know if you can hear me. If you can, please let me know. Make sure that everyone can hear me before I start launching into the webinar. So I can see there's a couple of people on there. Yes, cool. Okay, I'm getting some yeses. Good. All right, excellent. Okay, great. Thank you, everybody. So we've just moved premises over the weekend. So we've moved into a new office. We're a bit of a disarray at the moment, but I got my computer going, which is awesome. We are still setting up everything at the moment, and we're still having issues with phone lines. So it should be all sorted by tomorrow. We're moving over to Skype for Business, where you'll actually be able to ring in through Skype for Business. So we'll be able to chat with you tomorrow. We've got one phone line coming in at the moment today, so hopefully we'll all be up and ready to go tomorrow. So we're having fun and games. So it's been really interesting over the last couple of months because I've moved myself personally, and then we've also moved the office as well. So as you may know, it's always interesting times when you move your office around. Anyway, let's launch into today. So today's webinar is on third-party arrangements. So it's where you engage parties who deliver training and assessment on your behalf. Basically, that's what that means. So I'm going to go into a lot more detail of what a third party is, and I'm actually going to show you how to notify ASQA of any third-party arrangements. So if you go through this webinar and then realise, oh, actually I do have a third party, I'll actually send you the link so that you can notify ASQA of those third-party arrangements. If you have any questions around what is a third party, and in particular getting more specific around third parties and who they are and who you may be engaged to have as a third party, this is the time to ask the questions. I'm going to go through in detail about what third-party arrangements are and what you should have in place for those third-party arrangements, but you may have some more specific questions that relate to your business, and I'm quite happy to have a chat to you about that. Now, let's see if I can get this PowerPoint going. Okay, all right, cool. Do that. Okay, so as per usual, this webinar forms part of your continuous improvement process under Standards 2.2. Following this webinar, you should hold a quality and compliance meeting, and at that meeting you should discuss any third-party arrangements that you may have. These policies and procedures around third parties being 2.3, 2.4 and 8.3. You should also be minuting any changes that you may make to the policies and procedures or documents, or what your process is, or maybe that you need to set up a third-party arrangement and get it in place. So this should all be minuted at your monthly Q&C meeting. As per the policies and procedures for continuous improvement, you should undertake a review of the policies and procedures and make sure that you're actually doing what the policies and procedures says. Now, in our policies and procedures, we have quite a few processes in there around how to monitor third-party arrangements, and we actually have a policy and procedure around marketing with third-party parties as well. So check out the policies and procedures and have a look at how they relate to you and whether you need to modify those policies and procedures as well. You should also review any documentation relating to the standards we have reviewed in this session. As per usual, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat box on the left-hand side. I read the messages as I go along, so I'm quite happy to get some chats. It helps me when I have the chats because I'm actually answering your questions directly. So if you have a question, please throw it out there, and you can do direct messages to me as well. So if you have any questions you may not want to share with everybody else, that's fine. You can just do direct messaging to me. You just change send to, and you change the send to my name, I think it is. Yeah, you'll put my name in there. Okay, all right. So standards to, oh, you can't hear me, Anissa. Everyone else can hear me, Anissa, so it might be your microphone. So if you check out, oh no, you might bring your speakers, so you might want to check out your speakers. Just make sure I haven't lost anybody else. Make sure everybody else can hear me as well. Just let me know if you can hear me. I think you can actually do a thumbs up, or yeah, you can do a thumbs up, so I can know that you can hear me. So we've got one person who apparently can't hear at the moment. Okay, so you can, good. Okay, so it must be your speakers, Anissa, so you need to check out your speakers because other people can hear me. Okay, standards 2.3 and 2.4. The RTO ensures that where services are provided on its behalf by a third party, the provision of those services is the subject of a written agreement. So that means you must have a written agreement in place with any other third parties, and we'll go through who are those third parties. The RTO has sufficient strategies and resources to systematically monitor any services delivered on its behalf and uses these to ensure the services delivered comply with the standards at all times. So whenever you have a third party working with you under your third party arrangement, it's also their responsibility, or it's actually your responsibility, to ensure that they comply with the legislation as well. So, and that's your responsibility. So it's high risk actually having a third party, because if your third party does anything non-compliant and you're not monitoring that to make sure that they are compliant, your whole RTO can be taken down. You could lose your registration due to a third party making non-compliances on your behalf. So you've got to be really careful who you choose to have as a third party, and how you monitor them is also very important, because it's your responsibility to ensure that you're compliant with the standards at all times. So it's also your responsibility to monitor your third parties to ensure that they are actually complying with the standards at all times as well. Another way to do it is you could do something like what we do, and you have webinars on a monthly basis where you meet and discuss on those webinars compliance issues, and ensuring that they understand what their compliance requirements are as well. So that's really important as well. Hi Karen, we just had a late arrival by Karen. Hi Karen. Okay, so what is a third-party arrangement? So the standards for RTOs define a third party as any party that provides services on behalf of the RTO. This definition does not include a contract of employment between an RTO and employee, i.e. a trainer. So it doesn't include trainers and assessors. It's only where a trainer or assessor may be recruiting students on your behalf. That's the only time when that may change, and they're advertising your courses on your behalf. So anywhere where you have a trainer, assessor, or any other third-party arrangement where they're promoting your courses on your behalf and then recruiting students into your courses, so qualifications on your scope of registration, that's what's considered a third-party arrangement. Whereas a contract trainer, not a third party. Services means training, assessment, related educational support services, and or any activities related to the recruitment of prospective learners. It does not include services such as the student counselling, mediation, or information and communications technology support. So we're going to go into that a bit further. So educational support services, these services may include pre-enrollment materials, so where you might get pre-enrollment materials, study support and study skills programs, language literacy and numeracy programs or referrals to these programs, equipment resources or programs to increase access for learners with disabilities and other learners. So all of these, you don't have to have third parties. So just reiterate, these educational and support services, you do not need to have any third-party arrangements for these services. So learning resource centres, flexible scheduling and delivery of training assessment, learning materials. So all of these, you don't need a third party. Where you do need a third party, and we'll get to that, it might be another RTO who is delivering training and assessment on your behalf. So they may not have a qualification that you have in your scope of registration that they want to deliver under their scope, but they can't because they don't have it on their scope. So what you need to do is have a written agreement between that your RTO and their RTO, and that written agreement states that they will be delivering training and assessment under your scope of registration. So you have your scope of registration, which has your qualifications on it, and another RTO that doesn't have the same qualification on their scope may have a third-party arrangement with your RTO where they deliver training and assessment under your scope of registration. So I hope that makes it clear. So generally that's what it will be. Is you might find you'll get an RTO that will come to you who will go, I don't have this qualification on my scope, and it's pretty much generally high risk, or it might be first aid. So when I had my RTO, I delivered aged care training and childcare training, but I didn't have all the resources to deliver first aid training, and I didn't have the trainer to deliver first aid training. So I actually recruited a third party, which was another RTO that had first aid on their scope, and they came in and delivered training and assessment to my students, my childcare students and my aged care students, and they delivered first aid training to those students under their scope of registration. So we had our scope, and we had HLT AID 004, which is the first aid unit for aged care and childcare, but we didn't have all the materials, assessment tools, the mannequins and all that sort of stuff. This other RTO did. So we got this other RTO to deliver training and assessment on our behalf. They issued the certificate for the first aid unit, and then we did a credit transfer within our qualification for aged care and childcare once they got their certificate from this other RTO. So that's another example of a third party arrangement with another RTO. So it might be that they're delivering training under their scope at your RTO for your students, or it might be that you might go to an RTO and go, hey, I don't have this qualification on my scope, but I want to deliver training in this qualification. Can I work under your scope of registration until I get it on my scope? So it might be that you place it on your scope, or you just want to keep this third party arrangement going with this third party, so that because they have the skills and knowledge that you don't have. So any RTO can partner with another RTO and deliver training and assessment under another RTO scope of registration. That must have a written agreement. So in that situation, you must have a written agreement. The other situation may be non-registered training providers. So you might be working with a non-accredited training organisation who want to deliver training and assessment. So they're delivering training that's non-accredited, but they might want to take a unit out of your qualifications, or they might want to deliver a qualification from your scope of registration. They've never been registered with ASQA, they're non-accredited at the moment, but they want to deliver training under your scope of registration. So that's another organisation where you'd have to have a third-party arrangement with them. It could be a recruitment agent or broker. So this is a recruitment agent is someone who recruits students on your behalf. So what they will do is they will, normally it's a marketing company that will recruit students on your behalf, and what they'll do is they will advertise for students and they will place those students into your organisation. So an example, I think Seek have a website that you can advertise on, and they'll recruit students on your behalf. So you would need to have a third party arrangement, so an agreement in place with that third party who are recruiting students on your behalf. Now, the reason why you need to have this agreement in place is to make sure that that company that is recruiting students on your behalf is actually doing it ethically and within the requirements of the standards. So you need to make sure that they're complying with the standards as well. So you need to have an agreement in place with that third party who are recruiting students on your behalf, and in that agreement that they will comply with the legislation as well. Where this has come up as an issue in the past with ASQA, ASQA have had issues with training organisations who have third parties who are recruiting students on behalf of the RTO. For example, it can be the third party could be, so the recruitment company, what they could do is they, an example one could be something like Careers Australia. So Careers Australia hired a marketing company that went into shopping centres and recruited students on behalf of the RTO in the shopping centres. So some of the issues that ASQA had with these third parties who were advertising on behalf of the RTO is they were giving away free laptops and iPads and not actually explaining to the students. So this is under the Vet Fee Help program, where they weren't actually explaining to the student that the student would be required to pay off that debt. It was a Vet Fee Help loan that they were required to pay off through their tax. So it wasn't clear with these third-party marketing companies. They didn't actually understand what was the process for marketing and what were the requirements of the legislation. So as the RTO, you are the one that's responsible, not the marketing company. As the RTO, you're the one that's responsible that anybody marketing on your behalf is complying with the legislation as well, and that they're complying with any government funding programs as well, and that it's clear and transparent that where the marketing is coming from, so that the students understand where that's coming from. Okay, so recruitment agents or brokers are anybody who's recruiting on behalf of the RTO. So I've just got a question from someone just wondering about how my name can be changed just for certificate purposes. Because I'm running the webinar as well, I'll come to that question at the end, Abraham, and I'll answer that question at the end. If you have any questions that are relevant to what I'm discussing at the time, not a problem. I can answer them as I go. Any additional questions, I'll answer them at the end. Not a problem. I have no problems with doing that. I'm the only one running this presentation, so I don't have someone in the background who can chat to you in the background. So I'll answer your question after I go through third parties. So does anybody here on the webinar have any third party arrangements in place? If yes, can you describe that third party to me? So just in the chat section here, if you can just describe that third party, and then I might be able to answer any questions that you may have about that third party. If you don't, I'll just come up with more examples of third parties, but I just would be interested if there's anybody online right now who has a third party arrangement that they're not sure of. You may not even be sure whether you should have a third-party agreement in place with this person or with this organisation. So if you do, pop it in the chat there and I'll answer that question there. So, okay, so that third party is the recruitment agents or brokers. It could be employment agencies or job services. So it could be that you have an employment agency that is recruiting students for you on your behalf. So you need to make sure that they comply with the legislation as well. So you should have a written agreement in place that they understand their responsibilities of ensuring that they comply with the legislation as well. And that includes any marketing of their courses, that you are signing off on any marketing of courses, and that no marketing is going live or being sent out unless you've approved it as a CEO of the RTO first. The CEO must approve all marketing before any marketing goes out through third parties. Okay, so that's basically who third parties are. So as you may guess, the reason why these legislation is in place, these clauses are in place in the first place, is because there has been a lot of issues in the past where RTOs have had third parties who are delivering training and assessment on their behalf, or they've got a third party who's recruiting students on their behalf through the RTO, for the RTO, but they're not actually complying with the legislation, and most probably because they don't actually understand what their requirements are of the legislation. Now, one big tip that I can give you, if you have any third parties who wish to deliver training and assessment under your scope of registration or do any marketing on your behalf, I'd recommend that they attend my RTO compliance workshop, the one-day workshop that I deliver on RTO compliance, where I go through every standard in the legislation. We have public students who come along to those courses all the time. So anybody that you have as a third party could come along to my RTO compliance workshop where I can deliver training, and actually they'll get a better understanding of what the requirements are to comply with the legislation. Because it's also your responsibility to ensure that those third parties are also marketing correctly, and also have a good understanding of the standards. So what are their responsibilities under the standards? And the best way to do it is professional development. Okay, so that's who are third parties. So what these clauses mean to your RTO. So the RTO is responsible for all services delivered under its scope of registration, regardless of where these are conducted. So no matter what state, what training room, what country. So you could have a training organisation overseas delivering training and assessment on behalf of your RTO. So we've got clients, for example, who are delivering currently overseas. So in India, Dubai, Thailand, we have a range of RTOs who have currently got arrangements in place where they have a training organisation overseas that delivers training on their behalf under their scope of registration. So you can do that straight away, but you need to ensure that you have third-party arrangements in place and that it's clear what their responsibilities are to comply with the standards. Also, with those third parties, they need to understand what their rights and responsibilities are with regards to trainers and assessors, and that the trainers and assessors must hold the relevant qualifications, which includes the Australian qualifications. So they should hold the Certificate for in Training and Assessment, and they should hold the qualification that they are delivering overseas. So whatever it is that they're overseas. So what I've seen RTOs do is they will go overseas and deliver training overseas and train trainers, assessors over there to deliver the qualifications that they have on their scope overseas. The other way they do it is they might bring those students into Australia, get them to get the training completed in Australia and then deliver overseas, or they could do their training online. So they could learn, do the Certificate for in Training and Assessment online, although I'm not sure whether the new qualification is going to be available online in the future. We'll see what happens. Or they could do the qualification that they're going to be delivering online. For example, Diploma in Leadership and Management. They could do that qualification online and then deliver the training overseas face-to-face. So that's where a third party could be a provider that you have overseas who's delivering training on your behalf. This responsibility applies to all your obligations as an RTO, including providing data, so your quality indicator data, survey reports that students must complete. All those students for the third parties must also complete those as well. So if you have an RTO or another training organisation delivering training and assessment on your behalf, they are also responsible for ensuring that the quality indicator data forms are being filled in and returned to your RTO, and you are reporting that quality indicator data. They're also completing your enrolment form, and which includes all the event miss data, and that you're collecting all of that event miss data, and then you're entering all of that data into your database. So that's two forms of data that you should be that your third party should be collecting on your behalf, and that you should be entering into your system. Third parties may also be contacted by ASQA. So it might be that they may get a phone call from ASQA as part of your audit process, or they may go out and visit them if they're delivering training and assessment on your behalf. So you've got to make it clear to those third parties that they're responsible for cooperating with ASQA as well. That they are complying with advertising and marketing standards, so standards 4.1, 5.1 and 5.2, that they're complying with all of that legislation, and that they are marketing as per the requirements of ASQA and the standards for RTOs. That they're informing anybody that's informing prospective students of any information about your courses. They need to, that might be a third party arrangement. So for example, marketing on your behalf. Any marketing that is produced on your behalf for your RTO, as I stated before, your CEO should approve and make sure that they are complying with the legislation. For further information on what are the requirements for complying with the legislation, you should review our webinar on clauses 4.1, 5.1 and 5.2, and that'll give you a better understanding of what are the requirements that all your marketing should comply with. Anytime that you're dealing with complaints and appeals, your third party should also understand what the complaints and appeals process is. So they should be, if they receive a complaint, that should be filtered down through to you. If you receive a complaint directly through the RTO, you should filter it back through the third party. So you ensure that your third party understands that that you've received a complaint and what the process is for processing that complaint, and ensuring that you're responding to the complaint in accordance with the clauses, or clause 6, so standard 6 and the clauses under standard 6, which are all to do with complaints and appeals. Once again, if you want to have a better understanding of what that compliance requirements is, review the webinar for complaints and appeals standard 6. If you have any third party that's collecting fees on your behalf, or collecting any fees for enrolments into qualifications that are under your scope of registration, you need to ensure that you have arrangements in place for how they're going to report that. One of the big things is not collecting more than $1,500 prior to course commencement, and no more than $1,500 instalment payments should be collected. So that comes under standard 5.3 under collection of fees. And all your record keeping. So you need to ensure that you're collecting your EvetMIS data and that you're entering that into your EvetMIS compliant database. And that all records of students are maintained by your RTO. So any RTO or anybody delivering training and assessment under your scope of registration must provide all of the documentation back to your RTO. So you should keep all of the assessment tools, all the completed assessments, the class lists, the enrolment forms, any L&N assessments that you may have conducted, any other pre-course assessments, all course materials, assessment tools, any handouts that your trainers and assessors give out. You must keep a record of all of those on your file in your system. Okay, not a problem, Donna. Okay, written agreements. The RTO must have a written agreement with any third party or partner which clearly identifies the responsibilities of each party. So it must be clear, this is you as the RTO, what your responsibilities are, and this is the third party and what the responsibilities of that third party are. So, and then basically it is that they will comply with the legislation under your scope of registration. The agreement must clearly outline monitoring arrangements and how you will monitor that third party on a regular basis, and that the RTO will conduct to ensure compliance. So how will you monitor those third parties to ensure that they are compliant? So one of the ones that I recommend, you should be getting them to review policies and procedures on a monthly basis. You should be getting them to submit a report to you on a monthly basis, and you should be auditing them at least yearly. At least once a year you should be auditing them. I would recommend doing it 6 monthly, and any time any assessment tools come back, you are monitoring those assessments and actually reviewing the marking of those assessments and that they are compliant with the assessment questions that you have, and that they are marking the assessments the way that you want them to be marked, and that they're compliant with the rules of evidence and principles of assessment. Include clear guidelines to the partner or the third party on how to comply with the requirements of the VET quality framework. When it comes to recruitment of students, there are clear guidelines on the recruitment and enrolment process, including any L&N and pre-enrolment requirements. The agreement should include that the CEO of the RTO is responsible for approving all of the marketing before it is made publicly available. So it's always the CEO's responsibility to comply with the standards at all times. So it's really important that you have in the agreement how you're going to monitor that and ensure that the RTO is getting approval for all marketing before it is distributed. Include that the third party is responsible for cooperating with ASQA in your third party agreement, in the provision of information and in the conduct of audits. So they are responsible for responding to ASQA. So if ASQA get in contact with them as a third party, they need to respond. It's really important that they respond. You could be non-compliant and your RTO could be shut down if they don't respond, and if they don't respond appropriately. The RTO is responsible for issuing qualifications and statements of attainment. A third party can never, ever issue certificates on your behalf. Never, ever to issue certificates on your behalf. The RTO is responsible for issuing certificates at all times, and you can never ever get a third party to issue any certificates on your behalf, and all certificates should be issued through your database. So you're a VETMIS compliant database. I have seen this happen time and time again, where a third party's issuing certificates, and they should never be doing that. All certificates should be approved by your CEO or authorised personnel on within your organisation. They should never be issued by or signed by anybody outside of the RTO. So this is where a lot of RTOs come unstuck with their third-party agreements, because they've got third parties issuing certificates on their behalf. Never, ever should they be doing that. Written agreements, okay, so there's different written agreements that you can have. So some are for training and assessment services, and then there are other services where you may have written agreements, so recruitment services, for example. So if you have a written agreement where someone is delivering training and assessment on your behalf, your third-party agreement should include the name of your RTO and the third party, and that should include the ABN details of both parties, the start and end date of the agreement, details of the RTO's operations, including all delivery locations in Australia or elsewhere, clauses detailing your RTO's obligations under the agreement, for example, setting out which party will issue qualifications and statements of attainment, which party will provide pre-enrolment information, and which party will collect learner fees and enrolment information. So where we're saying here, setting out which party will issue qualifications and statements of attainment, as I just said, third parties should never, ever issue any certificates. So it should be clear in your third party agreement that you are responsible for issuing certificates and that the third party cannot issue certificates. So that's what you should have in there. And which party will collect learner fees and enrolment information. So it should be clear who is collecting the fees and the enrolment form, collecting the data on the enrolment form. So it could be that you are directing them to an online enrolment form on your website, and it could be that they're filling in that, or it could be that you have a paper-based one and that the student is completing the enrolment form, giving it to the third party, and then the third party gives it to you with all of your documentation. Clauses detailing the obligations of the third party. For example, setting out which party will provide the training and assessment materials. So are you providing the training and assessment materials, or will the third party be providing training and assessment materials? If your third party is providing training and assessment materials, you must have a copy of those training and assessment materials on your files. It is really important that you have a copy of all training and assessment materials that are used by all third parties as well as your RTO. So you need to have those on file, and that needs to be in your agreement that they need to do that. And any other resources and facilities. So you don't need to have access, you don't need to have those resources and facilities. The third party can have those, but you need to have it clearly on your written agreement that they have all the resources and the facilities to be able to deliver this training and assessments in accordance with the rules of evidence and principle assessment, in accordance with the requirements of the Union of Competency, being the performance criteria and the assessment conditions. So you need to make it clear with that third party that they must have all the resources and facilities in place. For example, if you have someone delivering childcare training under your scope of registration at another facility, you need to make sure that they have sufficient resources and facilities to be able to deliver childcare training. For example, they'll need to have access to cots and prams and high chairs and materials, toys and games and equipment and things like that. You need to also ensure for childcare, it's really important, that those third parties also have access to work placement and where are they going to place their students for work placement, and that they meet the requirements of work placement. As you may have heard me before, childcare is the highest risk qualification that you can put on your scope of registration. This is in accordance with ASQA. It's been ranked by ASQA as a high-risk qualification, and it has a lot of requirements behind it, with requirements on how you deliver that training and assessment. So you've got to be really careful if you have a third party delivering childcare on behalf of your RTO, on your scope of registration, that they are compliant with everything, which makes it very difficult. You won't find that you'll have a lot of RTOs that will have third-party arrangements for childcare because it's such a high-risk qual. But you most probably would with business. First aid, perhaps. There are a lot of big first aid RTOs out there who have trainers and assessors who recruit students and deliver training and assessment on behalf of the RTO, who would have to have all the mannequins in place and all the bandages and the first aid kits and all the requirements of the first aid training. Okay, so that's another example there. The mechanisms through which your RTO will systematically monitor the third party. If the third party is providing training and assessment materials, resources and facilities and developing marketing initiatives, set out how you will review these prior to use for all delivery sites and how you will ensure that trainers and assessors provided by the third party meet the requirements of the standards. So all third party trainers and assessors, you must have a staff file for all of those trainers and assessors on site at your RTO as well, and that they comply with the requirements of the standards, so 1.13. They hold certificate for in training and assessment, and they also hold the relevant qualification and have relevant industry experience, at least 3 years minimum industry experience to deliver that training under your scope of registration. Needs to be clear in your written agreements what record keeping procedures you'll have in place for student enrolment and completed student assessments. So how will they get all that information back to you? Will it be that they scan it and send it to you, or would it be that they post the files to you and that you maintain them in a file, on a file server? So you need to have it clear in your written agreement how they're going to do that. Clauses relating to which party will validate completed student assessments. So who's going to validate the assessment tools? You can get the third party to validate assessment tools, but they need to also comply with the requirements of the validation requirements. So who can be on your validations team? So refer to standard 1.9 to 1.11 for more information on validation. Any of your RTO's obligations or the third party's obligations relating to vet fee help, government-funded subsidies or any other financial support, and clauses requiring the third party to cooperate with ASQA to provide accurate responses to requests about delivery of services. So that's if you have anybody delivering training and assessment on your behalf. Now, you can also have a written agreement in place where you have someone recruiting students on your behalf. So in your written agreement, you should include the name of your RTO and the third party, the start and end date of the agreement, clauses detailing your RTO's obligations under the agreement. For example, you might want to stipulate that your RTO will review all marketing initiatives. I say you must, not might, and provide current and accurate pre-enrollment information. So that's the information on your course flyers, information on your enrollment form, information on their websites. So you need to ensure that their websites are compliant as well. And it needs to be clear if they're marketing on their websites, who is the RTO that will be issuing the certificates. So that would be you who would be issuing the certificates. And ensure that all the information provided to a learner meets the requirements of the clauses 4.1, 5.1, 5.2, 5.3 and 5.4. You must stipulate that the RTO will ensure that all materials in languages other than English will be translated by the RTO to ensure it meets the requirements. So if you are delivering training and assessment overseas, you can deliver training and assessment overseas in another language, but it must be clear the assessment tools, you must have a copy of the assessment tools in English as well as in the other language, so that when auditors come to your site to audit, they can actually read the assessment tools and they understand what the assessment tools are. Clauses detailing the obligations of the third party. For example, you might want to stipulate that the third party will provide your RTO with all marketing material before publishing, providing learner enrolment information and learner fees to the RTO, and train the third-party staff to be able to assist with training package and enrolment inquiries. Any of your RTO's obligations or the third party's obligations relating to vet fee help, government-funded subsidies, or any other financial support. Details of any arrangements for commission or fees to be retained by the third party should be in your agreement. The mechanisms through which your RTO will systematically monitor the third party, and clauses requiring the third party to cooperate with ASQA and to provide accurate responses to requests that about provisions of services. So if you have someone recruiting students on your behalf, this is what should be included in your agreement with that third party. Now, I'm just going to send you a link from the ASQA website, which has, it's a fact sheet on third-party arrangements, just so that you can see what are the, sorry, I just sent that to one person, not to everyone, so I'll just send that to everyone. This gives you more information on those third-party arrangements. I also have that in our within the webinar here as well. For anybody who's watching the webinar and not on the link, I will have that link coming up soon. But this link will send you to the ASQA website, and it gives you more information about third-party arrangements and how to notify ASQA. I'm going to show you how to do that as well, but also how to, what are the requirements on what should be in your agreements. So when developing a strategy to monitor your agreements, you should consider timeframes for monitoring. When and how often will you be monitoring those third parties? Procedures for monitoring. So who will conduct the review and how will outcomes of the review be acted upon? Now, if you look at our policies, procedures under the Q&C manual, you'll actually see that we have policies and procedures already in place within the Q&C manual for monitoring third-party arrangements. So you can use that as part of your agreement. How will you monitor student assessments, pre-enrollment information given to students, training and assessment resources, facilities and equipment, trainer assessor competencies and qualifications, marketing, advertising information, issuance of qualifications and statements of attainment, and record management practices. So this should be included in your monitoring strategies. How will you implement strategies for two-way feedback between your RTO and the third party? How are you going to make sure that your third party is giving you feedback on a regular basis? So you should have that in your monitoring strategies. So check out our policies and procedures on third parties, because we actually have that in there. I'm just going to try and bring it up in the Q&C manual. So I'm just going to share my desktop. Okay. So I'm just going to share my desktop where I have the Q&C. So the quality and compliance manual. So you should see that up on your screen soon. In there, I have policies and procedures on monitoring independent parties, third parties, how you ensure that third-party arrangements are clear, that you have that arrangement in place. I have some information there on what is a third party, what kind of third-party arrangements the RTO may have, when to notify the regulator, so there's information in there on when to notify them. Also, marketing. So I was saying before, if you have any marketing where a third party is marketing on your behalf, on their marketing, it should be clear that this qualification unit is delivered in partnership with your RTO name and ID. You should have that on all of your marketing, but refer to this standard for how to comply with third-party arrangements, so clauses 2.3 and 2.4. Okay, we also have strategies in place in the policy and procedures manual on how you'll monitor third parties. So the way you monitor them is getting them to use your forms and documentation. So get them to complete trainers reports on a monthly basis. Get their students to complete training evaluation forms, and also the quality indicator forms. Get them to complete industry consultation surveys. So get their employers or companies that they are working with to do industry consultation as well. Get them to complete opportunity for improvement forms, complaints and appeals forms, WHS incident reporting forms, and also report back to your quality and compliance meetings. So that's one way of monitoring of your third parties, ensuring that they're getting involved with your whole Q&C process. You do audits, regular audits of those third parties, and you conduct it at least once a year to ensure that they are compliant with the standards. You could also get a third party like us to come in and do audits of your third party. So we can audit your third party to ensure that they are complying. We've also got some ones around third party trainers and assessors. So if you have a trainer or assessor working with that third party, I was stating before that you need to make sure that you keep a copy of all their files in place within your RTO as well. Okay, so that's the policy and procedure. So you should also make sure that your third party is complying with those policies and procedures as well. Okay, just go back to the PowerPoint. Okay, how are you for that? Okay, that's it. That's it there. Okay, third party trainers and assessors. I touched on that one already. Excuse me. sorry, sneezing. So it's a requirement under the third party arrangements that any third party trainers and assessors, so that's a trainer or assessor working under the other third party who will be delivering the training and assessment under your scope of registration. They've got to comply with the requirements of standards 1.13 to 1.16, which is the standards for trainers and assessors. It's also their responsibility to undertake professional development in both the VET and the vocational sectors to maintain their currency within their industry. So they're maintaining currency as with training and assessment, but they're also maintaining currency within the qualification that they're delivering. They hold the current qualifications in both VET and their vocational area and are maintaining their currency within their industry. So it's the responsibility of the RTO to notify the regulator of any third-party agreements that they enter into within 30 calendar days of that agreement commencing. So whichever happens first. So your RTO must notify ASQA whenever it starts or ends a third-party agreement. Notification of third-party agreements must be done online via ASQA.net, although it looks like they've got a different link now. It will be in ASQA.net eventually, but I found this link. So this is a link that you can use where you can notify third-party service arrangement notification. So you can do it through that link, which I'm also going to bring up in the PowerPoint as well. This requirement covers agreements for a third party to provide any of the following. So I'm going to take a quick look at that third party arrangement notification with ASQA. So I've got that screen up now. So when that link that I've just sent you will send you to this ASQA link. I've got this from the ASQA website. So you complete this, the third party service arrangement notification. So what your RTO name, legal entity is, any trading names you have, and your RTO ID should go in there. Your email address, who are you, type of legal entity, so what type of RTO are you? So are you a proprietary limited, a natural person? So most of our clients are proprietary limited, so they should fill in that one. If you're a government entity or anything like that, you should fill in any of those. This is where you fill in the third party details. So you're notifying of commencement or cessation. So, and then you put the date of when this third party agreement is commencing or completing. The legal name of that third party and any trading names that that third party may have. Is the third party an Australian business? If yes, you'll need to provide the ABN and ACN. You also, if they're an RTO as well, you would put their RTO in there. Yeah. If they're not an RTO, you don't need to worry about that. The contact name of that third party should go in there, and their contact details should go in there. So what services are they providing? Are they recruiting students on your behalf? Are they enrolling students on your behalf? Are they providing educational or support services? So as I said before, you don't need to actually fill that in for support services, but if you want to do that. If they're delivering training and assessment on your behalf, you should tick that box. If they're issuing qualifications, which I would not be doing, I wouldn't be getting them to issue the qualifications. You're not actually required to do that. Include services to overseas students. So if they're delivering students to services to overseas students, you should be clicking yes or no here. So that's if they're delivering training overseas. This declaration must be signed by the CEO. So you'll need to download a stat deck, get them to sign it, and then upload it, and then submit this form. And that's basically what you do when you're reporting to ASQA. Okay, and we're almost finished. So if you have any questions, please pop them in the chat box and I'll answer them in the chat box. But we're almost finished with our third-party arrangements here. Okay, so that's how you notify ASQA. So I've got that link there. So anybody who's watching this webinar who hasn't seen the chat, this is the link here. So you can go to this website here. You can also go to the ASQA website and type in third parties, and they'll have that link in there. It will eventually be in ASQAnet, so you will be able to notify through ASQAnet eventually, but at the moment you need to go through this link. There is no cost associated with submitting the notification form. ASQA will process the form and send you an email confirming and update your details of your organisation's registration details, and it should go onto training.gov.au as well that you have this third-party arrangement. It is an explicit requirement under the standards for RTOs that you must notify ASQA within 30 calendar days of entering a written agreement with another organisation for the delivery of the services of training and assessment. So you need to notify them, ASQA, within 30 calendar days of that agreement commencing. And that's it. That's it about third-party arrangements. Do you have any questions? If you do, please post them. I don't seem to have any questions. If we don't have any questions, I did have another question that I'm going to answer. So I'll just let you know the next webinar, it will be on Monday, the 7th of August at 3 p.m. So Abraham had a question, just wondering how my name can be changed just for certificate purposes. So Abraham, assuming this question is around certificate of your ASIC certificate. Do you mean your ASIC certificate? Or so your ASIC certificate for your company registration? Or do you mean the certificate that you are issuing? So I just need some clarification there. So I think Abraham's still online. I'll just answer that question. Anybody else who's finished up, you can leave for the day if you wanted to, unless you want to have an answer to this question as well. But thank you very much for attending today's session. This session has been recorded, and a link to this recording will be sent to you. It may not be till tomorrow. It just depends on how quickly the link gets sent through to us. But you'll be sent a link to this directly, but you'll also be receive a link to our YouTube channel as well, where you'll get a link to the YouTube. We will be receiving a certificate of attendance, right? That's correct. That's correct. Okay, so that was easy, Abraham. Yes, you'll be receiving, anybody who has attended today's webinar will receive a certificate of attendance for attending the live webinar. They will be sent out to you tomorrow by Jody. So Jody, our membership manager, will be sending out all the links to the webinar tomorrow. So you'll be getting a link to the webinar, and you'll also be receiving a certificate of attendance. So that was a nice, easy question, Abraham. I can answer that one quite easy. So you need to change your name, okay? So if you let Jody know, so if you need to change the name, email Jody at vivacitycoaching.com.au, and she will notify you. Can email her of the name change. Abraham, do we also need to change your name in Unicorn? If you do, let Jody know. So Jody can change your name in Unicorn as well. So for your certificate of attendance, Jody can help you with that. So you can email Jody tomorrow, and you can email her today, and she'll be back in the office tomorrow to respond to you. She's not in the office on Monday. She's here on Tuesdays. So get in contact with Jody. Let her know about the name change, and let her know about any changes that need to go in Unicorn, and Jody can help you with that. Any other questions that anybody has? Let me know. I think we've still got everybody here. Have any other questions? Thank you, Abraham, not a problem. Anybody have any other questions about anything? Unless you want to know the meaning of life, I'm only going to answer 42. Because that's the meaning of life according to Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I think I've had this reference before, but anyway. Webinar was very productive. Oh, very good. Thank you, Abraham. I'm glad it was. But any other questions that you may have regarding anything? Otherwise, we're out of here for today. Thank you very much for attending today's webinar. As I said, recording will be sent out to you. And you'll get more information sent out to you about how to access this webinar online. Thank you very much for attending today. Thank you for your patience at the moment. We have one phone line at the moment. We should have all our phone lines back up tomorrow. We are also all using Skype for Business. I sent you an email last week regarding Skype for Business, so you can access all of our team on Skype for Business. If you can't get us on the phone, get us on Skype or email us. So get in contact with us on Skype. We should all have our Skype accounts all up and going now, so you should be able to access that. Otherwise, we'll be back online tomorrow with our phones. Thank you for your patience, and I look forward to catching up with you again at our next webinar. I'm hitting the road this week. I'm off to Perth this week to deliver an RTO compliance workshop. And I'm on the road soon for all of our RTO compliance and assessment validation workshops. So maybe I'll see you soon at the workshops. Catch you around. Have a great day. Thank you very much for attending. Bye.